Hey everyone, my name is Richard Dick Solomon. I'm the author of the Signature Service Strategy. I'm really excited to be at Hrmatt's one-day conference, Business Unusual. You know, the disruptive HR, really leading organizations to greater degrees of sustainability. Do you know that your organization can be designed for purpose? Today, I'm going to be speaking about re-engineering your organization for great success, for better bottom line performance, better customer service, and for longevity to be sustainable into the future. Hope you'll join me. Hope you have a good time.
We're ready to get this show on the road, and we are excited about our first speaker. And he happens to be a sponsor as well. When we were putting together the speakers for the conference today, we were looking at who could we hear from, consulting practitioners, who could really give us, once again, as I said, some tools, some nuggets to go with. And Richard Dick, his name came up, Richard Dick Solomon, and he's going to be doing redesigning the organization for longevity. And I want you all to pay attention to what he's going to talk through, because a lot of the redesign of the organization tends to come from outside of HR. So he's going to show us how to link, how HR links into that whole redesign. So Richard Dick Solomon is the principal consultant and managing director of Development Consulting Center Limited. He holds a postgraduate degrees in organization transformation and strategic human resource management. And he has over 25 years experience in organizational development. As a change architect and strategist, he specializes in signature service, leadership development, and change. As a global speaker, coach, trainer, and consultant, Richard supports the development of individuals and organizations in over 36 countries. When we talked, but the last time we spoke, he was in South Africa, and so that's no joke. His client list includes Fortune 500 companies like 3M, Nestle, General Electric, IBM, BP, Vodafone, Unilever, Royal Bank of Canada, and Fujitsu. He holds memberships at the NTL Institute of Applied Human Behavior, the Association of Training and Development, and the Human Resource Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Richard sits on several boards and management committees, including, and I always like to hear this, the Trinidad and Tobago Scout Association, the PRVM, which is actually the Performing Arts Academy, and the Program for Development and Training at the Commonwealth Telecommunications Organization in the United Kingdom. So a real global player. Richard is listed in the Who's Who in Trinidad and Tobago business and has lectured management and human resource management. Let us give a warm welcome to Richard Dick Solomon.
All right. Thank you very much, Nicolette. And good morning, everyone. Hey, good morning. All right. Is there coffee out there? Are you all awake? It's good to be here with you. As Nicolette was reading the list, and they've started a timer on me here. The first association that I joined as a practitioner was Hrmatt. So before they were, I think that's something that should be said. And in absentia, I'd also like to say that I'd also like to give honor to Anthony Watkins. He's not here yet, but he's the one who opened the door for me to walk into this space. So in absentia, I'd like to just give credit to Anthony Watkins. This is our small consulting team, lead consulting team. Terry-Ann is actually here with me today. At the booth, we do have a booth on the outside, and I encourage you to come chat with me there afterward during the day. These blue circles are places where we show up on the planet, and I've been spending a lot more time on the African continent. There's so many things happening out there. Very, very exciting time to be alive. When you live on an island, you don't realize how big the world is and how many other things are happening in other spaces. Today, I want to talk with you about what I'd like to call design for purpose. I was on a tour somewhere, and someone used the term, I can't remember where I was, someone used the term human technology. And it stuck with me because as organizations, your organizations, face the challenges that we face, how do we design the organization to behave in the ways that we want it to behave? I've been saying for years that HR needs to lead the organization. I've been saying this for over 10 years, that HR needs to lead the organization. And I want to put that into the conversation as well today. We face a major challenge, a number of them. Frustration about customers and their defections, sluggish demand. A lot of my clients have been saying, especially in this part of the world, the economies are sluggish. And we know as HR practitioners that when things are tough, the first budget that usually gets hit is the people budget. Can I get an amen? Yeah? The first budget that normally gets hit is the people budget. So when things are tough, organizations are worried and concerned about the economy. How do we get our staff to perform in the ways that we want them to? How do we get customers to pay more? Because sometimes they just need to pay more, given what it costs us to do what we have to do, to take the upsells and the cross-sells. And how do we ensure that we engineer the organization? And I'm using this term very deliberately, engineer and design the organization for sustainability. Many organizations have tried training staff, but the issues persist. And we feel stuck trying to fix issues and outing fires as they come up. Sometimes we implement strategies, all of which are important, but not all of which are aligned. And on the other end of that, we don't always get what we want on the other side. But there are great opportunities in the market before us. The research tells us that demand is increasing. If you look at this chart, and I'll tell you, there are only two categories of products here that are not, where demand is not increasing, and that is personal computers and digital cameras. And that is only because, well, smartphones, the smarts in smartphones, part of it is personal computers and digital cameras. But demand is increasing, and that creates opportunities for organization. It also creates challenges for HR. There's a big delivery gap. Bain & Company found this, and you'll find this in my book, and I'll talk a little bit about that some more, that 80% of companies believe that they provide a superior proposition, but only 8% of customers agree. So as many organizations think that they're the best thing since sada roti, I know we say sliced bread, but I'll go with sada roti this morning. Most customers don't believe that. There is this big delivery gap, and that tells me that there is room at the top. There are a number of other business opportunities, and for this part, I want to focus on customers. 64% of customers who leave organizations do so because of a service problem. 85% of customers are actually willing to pay more for better service. And 95% of customers say that organizations don't exceed their service expectations. 70% of your customers who complain will do business with you again if you solve the problem in their favor. And that number jumps to 95% if you solve the problem on the spot. 90% of the public consider service when choosing to do business with a company. Now you might say, Richard, well, this is an HR conference. Why are we talking about service? Well, why does the organization exist? There's only one reason. The only reason that your organization, and I don't care what business you're in, the only reason that your organization exists is to provide some kind of service or some kind of product for your customers and your consumers. That's the only reason. And therefore, everything that we do must be aligned to their focus. Now, here's the thing. Organizations should not be accidentally designed. Lots of organizations, if I ask you, how did it come to be that way? Can you tell me? Well, you probably will tell me some history, and you'll say there was a time when this happened and when that happened. But the truth is that you can actually design an organization for purpose. What are these vehicles designed for? The one on the left is a minivan. But what is this minivan designed for? Tell me. It's a people mover. And typically it's going to be 7 seats or 8 depending on the configuration. Maybe it's going to be children, maybe it's going to be soccer practice, maybe it's going to be dance, maybe it's going to be swimming, maybe it's going to be dirty gym clothes, whatever it is, but it's a people mover. The one on the right is also a people mover. But what is this designed for? Speed. It's a people mover. It drives on the same road. Usually it takes two people. This is a Porsche Panamera, the one on the right. Takes two people. It's a people mover. These are designed for very different purposes. They're both people movers, but one is lots of people, the other one is just a couple people and speed and some style, if you ask me. Let's get this video up. And you tell me what's wrong with this. That's not part of it, that noise.
But Holland comes in for a pit stop. Time to refuel and change tires. Lou Moore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch.
These guys are really working.
The tires are changed at last. A crewman polishes the windshield as Holland moves away just 67 seconds after he stopped.
What's wrong there in either of those situations? What's wrong? Can anybody offer an answer? What's wrong? Say again? Bureaucracy in one situation. Some people are going like, yeah, I know about that. How many people does it take to buy a pencil? What else is wrong? Well, let me cut it short. Nothing is wrong. These two behave the way they're designed to behave. In the first case, only a certain amount of people could work on that particular situation. They had particular tools, resources, skills, abilities, competencies, and they behaved in the way that they were supposed to behave. It took them almost a minute and a half to get that done. In the second situation, what was wrong? Nothing. What was right? Nothing was particularly right. They did what they're supposed to do. They were designed, that system, that situation, those people were designed to behave in that particular way. And my question is, how is your organization designed to behave? Why is this not staying? There we go. How is your organization designed to behave? There's this African proverb that says, when the drummers change their beat, the dancers must also change their steps. Who gets to decide the design of your organization? Who makes that very specific, intentional decision? And I'll go a little bit further. Who better than HR to do it? See, it shouldn't be accidental. In the first situation, you looked at that pit crew, very slow. There was one guy polishing the glass. It was the last thing on earth to do. And he rubbed it and he rubbed it and he rubbed it and he kept going. And it took forever. The record for this pit crew work now stands at 1.96 seconds. They changed all the tires. And God alone knows what else needs to be done in 1.96 seconds. And the only reason that they behave that way is because that organization, the pit crew, is designed to behave that way. how is your organization designed to behave? HR has gone through a revolution and is going through a revolution. In its earliest stages, there was the HR admin, very focused on personnel and the transactional components of HR. And that has moved on to this functional HR where, learning and compensation and those kinds of very expert components of HR. But HR now is being called upon to behave differently. HR is in this third and fourth wave, where for me, I'll say this, HR is now being called upon to design the organization to meet the demands and the challenges of the market. That is not a reactive piece of work. Stay with me. That is not about reacting to, we need a body in this place. That is not about reacting to, we've got a strategic plan to execute, so we need these competencies and these bodies in these positions to do these actions. That is about, hear me now, designing the organization to behave a particular way. And you can do that. You actually can design the organization, not just by where the boxes are, but also by whom you put in those boxes and what competencies they possess, as well as what is the overall ethos of the organization, the beliefs and the values, which really defines how the organization behaves. That is what really defines how the organization behaves. So, we talk about organizational archetypes. The overriding way that the organization sits and performs. What is the organization best known for? Let's clarify this concept of an archetype. 2 questions. How many wheels does a car have? How many wheels does a car have? Is anybody out there? 4, okay. How many legs does a chair have? 4, good. And you are absolutely correct. That's the archetype of a car and a chair. But what about this chair? Or this chair? Or this chair? These are also chairs. You weren't wrong. But you hold in your mind an archetype of what a chair is supposed to look like. 4 legs. The same for a car. The one on the right is known as a tuk-tuk or a rickshaw, depending on where you go. If you're in Mozambique, you call it a tuk-tuk, or Nigeria. And if you are in Asia, it's called a rickshaw. But it only has 3 wheels. And so too the Polaris slingshot on the left only has 3 wheels. But you are right. The archetype of a car is a 4-wheel vehicle. There is an archetype, and some organizations have come to be known for certain things, certain behaviors. So if you went to a public organization in Trinidad and Tobago, I don't want to name any, there are certain behaviors that we have come to expect. I don't want to name any, and I don't want to say what the behaviors are, because I don't know who's in the audience. Right? They didn't send me a list. But no, you may be wrong. I went to renew my driver's permit at the new place in Caroni, and in 37 minutes, I had a brand new warm driver's permit in my hand. Warm. Now, if I were to ask you, is that the archetype? Somebody's applauding in this corner. I wonder where these people work. The point is, there is an archetype. What is the organization known for? And you're not always right. The Polaris is a 3-wheeled car. So, Apple is known for being an outlaw. And Disney is known for magic. And Jeep is known for exploration. And who's the motorcycle maker that is in the news these days? Harley Davidson is known for being a little bit of an outlaw and a rule breaker as well. And now they're in the bad books of the President of the United States. Nike is known for being the hero and just doing it. And you don't even need to see the name Nike. You just need to see the swish. And you feel to put on those clothes and walk or run or something. At least pose. At least pose. But because the organization has developed not just a brand, but an archetype around that, what is your organization's archetype? Is it known for what you want it to be known for? And thereby we ask the same question again. Who is designing your organization? The assertion I'm making here is that we can re-engineer organizations. We can re-engineer it for sustainability, for longevity, for innovation, for aggression. We can re-engineer our organizations. And my question to you is a rhetorical one. Who better to do this than HR? I wrote the book, The Signature Service Strategy, and this was published in March of this year. And everything I'm going to talk to you about from here on in comes out of chapter 10. That is about crafting the culture of the organization. Because when we talk about the archetype and when we talk about re-engineering, we're not just talking about boxes and people and paint and colors and branding. That's great stuff, but we're talking about the very belly of the organization. We're talking about down in the belly of the organization. And therefore, I'm going to focus on the 8th part of this model, which is the crafting of the organizational culture. And I can't talk to you about all of this here because we only have so much time. But let's get into this part about how do we re-engineer our organization so that it behaves differently. And therefore, what is culture? Well, it's comprised of a set of values and beliefs and assumptions and myths and legends and norms shared by members of an organization. This is the big part. It is the invisible yet powerful force that largely defines how people work, interact, think, decide, and behave. This is it. It is the invisible yet powerful force that defines how people, largely defines how people work, interact, think, decide, and behave. If you talk about what makes an organization successful, I'm not talking about accidental success. You know, in some cases, if you just stand there, people will come. Trinidad and Tobago is a place like that. It's starch mango season right now. If you turn a barrel upside down on the side of the road, people will stop and say, is mangoes you have there? I'm not talking about that kind of success. I'm talking about when the market is sluggish, like now. See? Because you really can't say you are that great of an organization and a business person if your success is accidental, if it's never been tested. But when the market is sluggish, what causes you to be successful? What sits in the belly of the organization? That powerful force that largely defines how people work, think, interact, decide, and behave. Culture exists both at the organizational and national level. How come some countries are more competitive than others? If you look at the Global Economic Forum, the World Economic Forum, they put out a list of competitiveness. I think we were number 78? 98 at the last time. And Francis, Jamaica is actually ahead of us. My friend Francis Wade. How come? Well, that has everything to do with culture at a national level. We know this phrase, a carnival mentality. I don't know if we know where it comes from. Lee Kuan Yew is the one who coined that phrase, came to Trinidad and said that in the 60s about us. How come? How come that our work ethic is where it is? And I encourage people, go to the World Economic Forum and download that report and go to Trinidad and Tobago and see what they say about our work ethic. This is not about your organization in particular, you know. This is something about our culture. But you will argue with me, Richard, all organizations are not the same, and I would agree with you. There is such a thing as a subculture. There are some organizations that sit further ahead than others, where you can get your driver's permit done in 37 minutes. I don't know if that is an anomaly, but I hope not. I hope the next time I go, which is 10 years from now, thank God. There are some organizations that I've interacted with where it doesn't fit this model, where people behave differently right here in this Trinidad and Tobago. How is that? How is it? It is something about the culture, something down in the belly of the organization. And I am asserting to you, my hypothesis is that you can change that. You can decide what that culture looks like. You can re-engineer it. Is it easy? No. Is it possible? Yes. And who else to do it but HR? Your work, the work of HR practitioners now, is to say, what does the market need from us? What do our stakeholders need from us? And what do we need to be in order? We as an organization need to be in order to deliver that. Now, I know that's not always easy. One of the things is that HR sometimes reports into the wrong group. So sometimes you're subsumed under down in some administrative or finance group. And in order to get things to move, no offense to anyone who's in finance here, no offense, but sometimes to get things to move, the part of the brain that lights up for the finance people is very different to the part of the brain that lights up for the HR people. Literally, when you look at the brain, you see blood flow is different. See, it's actually exactly opposite. So sometimes you are saying, hey, we need to do this. And, and finance is saying, well, I ain't going to sign off on that, you need to convince me. Part of the reason that HR is not getting its position is that the HR people, you need to be business people first. You need to speak the language of business. You need to speak the language of finance. It's not fuzzy. It's not touchy-feely. There's nothing that I'm going to tell you here is fuzzy or touchy-feely. We have hard work to do. And that hard work must deliver business results. When we talk about re-engineering for sustainability, all of that must track to business results. So, when we talk about culture, a lot of times we proclaim, and this is a model that I kind of made some adjustments to. I didn't come up with this originally. But we talk about very often the values of the organization. And if you look at this model, in the middle, you'll see proclaimed values. Let me make it easy. That's what's on the wall. You know those? I want to say to you, that's not the culture of your organization, usually. That's what you say it is. That's what you'd like it to be. But very often there's a difference between what we say it is and what the organization really is, our underlying beliefs. So if you walked into a company that you were not familiar with, you would see the artifacts and the behaviors, the kind of cars that people drive, the way offices are laid out, how people dress, etc. You may also see written somewhere, here are these values and this is how the organization is supposed to be. But deep underneath that are the underlying beliefs of the organization that really define how people work and behave and act and what they do and what they don't do and whether or not they feel they need to come to work early and look busy all day. I know this doesn't happen in your organizations, but I've come across organizations like that. Not here. My point is that when you look at an organization, very often what we say about the organization is not what it is. There are some deep underlying beliefs that define how people make decisions, that decide, quote unquote, whether people are able to take a risk, whether they're going to get beaten up for trying to do something different, whether or not they're able to say, well, no, sir, meaning someone above them in the organization, I disagree. I think there's another way to approach this. And whether or not they're going to be told in those words or others, no, this is above your pay grade. See, all of this tracks back to the beliefs and the behaviors in the organization, which tracks back to culture, the real culture. And I'm saying that HR's role is to re-engineer this. So, there are some conditions under which re-engineering works best. When things are tight, when we have a major crisis, when things are bad, when leadership changes, senior leadership changes, when the organization is small or young or new, or where the culture is weak. If you ask me, number one is ever present in this current market. See, how many government organizations are in the room represented? How many government organizations? Any? Where's the hand? Okay, there are two at that. And I'm not going to say anything bad about you, don't worry. I've heard government organizations say, all over the world say, well, we have no competition, and where will they go to get their passport? I'm just saying passport. They have to come to us? Or is that true? I was just doing some work, but just at a conference last month in Barbados with CEOs of power companies. And there's a conversation now in the Caribbean about competition for power companies. Albeit, in most cases, there's only one. Well, renewables. Well, government downsizing, privatization. Do these things sound familiar? There are crises on the door, whether you are a government, a monopoly, or you're a private sector organization. For private sector, it's easy. You just need to look around at your competition and see market share shrinking. Say your customers are buying less, throughput, output is less, or whatever it is, cost of raw materials is higher, etc., etc., etc. And it's easy to identify the major crises that the organizations are facing. I'm saying that these conditions tend to make it a little bit easier for people to say, hey, we need to do something different. See, if everything is fine, then why do we need to change? Remember, the human animal doesn't really like this thing called change, you know. The human lizard, the lizard brain interprets change as danger. Because we have these different brains, and that's for another program. not a conference. So we don't really like it, but when it comes to survival, there's a greater likelihood that the organization and the individuals are willing to change. So let me walk you through some steps. One, you need a big reason. You need a big why. The organization needs a big why. And the organization needs leaders in front in terms of whatever re-engineering. HR needs to make sure that whatever re-engineering you do, you've got your major leaders on board. Let me say a word on that. I get calls from organizations that says, hey, we need to transform this part or this issue or change this or plan the organization change. We need to do this. And I get the call from HR. And respectfully, I always say, okay, I don't mind us talking about this, but I need your CEO in the room. No, this is an HR initiative. We own this. I said, fine, no problem, but let's not pretend. Let's not pretend who has the power to make the kinds of changes that are necessary to transform. Stay with me. So I'm saying to you as HR, if your leaders, I'm not just talking about you as HR now, and it's even worse when you are 2 or 3 levels down. Meaning, if you don't report into a CEO, so you are not in the suite of chiefs, as I like to call it, chief executive, chief finance, chief IT, chief information, chief HR, chief people. If you're not in that suite, it's even harder. Now, you might say to me, Richard, well, the way our organization is designed, I report into administrative group or something like that. That's fine, but you need those senior leaders on board and championing whatever process you're trying to do in terms of re-engineering your organization. And forgive me for being doom and gloom. You cut your chances by about 70 or 80% if those people are not on board. I'm not saying this because I've read it in a book. I'm saying this because this is what I've seen in my practice. As we've worked with organizations all over the world, now 38 countries. If those people are not on board, you cut your chances by about 70%. It's hard to re-engineer an organization where your most senior leaders are not on board. Next thing is to get clear on the destination. Where are we going? People don't do well with saying, all right, we're going down the road. Where is down the road? What does it look like and what will it mean? That clarity of vision as to where you're taking this organization, and don't get me wrong, you won't always know everything about what that new organization would look like, but you need to get some big pieces in place and know what those are, and put those out there so that people know. HR is supposed to be the expert on all things people. So anything people, you are the expert. If we talk about how do we get people to move, well, people need to know where are we going, why do we need to go? Big reason. But who's also coming along? My leaders are on this journey as well. And we have to co-opt, my number is at least 15% of the organization to be part of leading this process of re-engineering. There should be minimal degrees of separation between anyone in the organization and your army of change agents, your re-engineering army. Why? Because in some cases, you can't speak the language of certain parts of the line. And in some cases, they don't trust you. You mean they don't trust HR? Yeah. Sometimes. Let's be honest. And so you need people deep in the organization who will support this process of re-engineering. One mistake that I'd like to point out, do not only co-opt people who are the biggest champions and the ones who say, yeah, let's do it, let's change, let's be different. That's a mistake. You want some of those people who say, no, this is not a good idea. We tried this before, it didn't work. You remember when you were in university, I was here? Where you coming from with this new idea? You need some of those people. Why? Usually they have a soapbox and they have some people who listen to them, and therefore they could be consultants to the process, but also they're not going anywhere. I say this guardedly, you keep your friends close and you keep your enemies even closer. They can help you in terms of knowing how do we get this piece of the business to be different? How do we reach, what language, what method, what approach do we need to use with those people in order to move them in this direction that we're trying to do, to re-engineer for sustainability? Plan for actions, and I say plan for actions including micro goals. We love strategy. All of us when we go to university, they tell us in our MBAs and so on, we love to talk about strategy and build strategy, and that's great, but we need to drill that very, very, very deep. So what are the critical major goals? You need that, but then that needs to be drilled way down deep into the organization. Way down deep, so that people know on a daily basis what are they doing that's part of this re-engineering effort. We measure and act on not just what was supposed to happen. Historically, that's how we measure. We measure, oh crap, it used to be, it was last quarter. By the time you get the results of that, it's gone. You can't do anything, you can't undo it. We focus, therefore, on the lead actions, the things that will inform or create the outcomes that we want to have. Imagine if you have everybody in your organization. We say we have a particular strategy. And let me pause here not pause, but let me just say this. I know what this is like, This is like flying a 747 and changing the engine at the same time. Because the business has to keep going. You have to keep doing what you do in Alana. You have to keep making methanol. You can't stop. We have to keep doing what we're doing. All over all the different organizations, you still have to keep doing whatever you're doing. But you're making these changes, and therefore we have to devote some resources and some time to these adjustments. It is important that we know what those micro goals are and the lead actions that will inform the outcomes that we're trying to get. People need to know what's the score. Have you been looking at the football? Some of those matches in the second half, you realize how these people behave differently. Oh gosh, boy, we only have a few more minutes. You feel we will get lick out here? Nah. We're pushing hard. We're keeping the ball only in that half of the field. You with me? People play differently when they know the score, and they need to keep score, and people need to be held accountable. This is a challenge I find that HR has not done a good enough job with. Keeping people accountable for what they're supposed to do, making them accountable. And I'm not talking about your once every quarter, or 6 months, or once a year. God forbid once a year. So I don't know what that does. I mean, I don't know all the specifics of your organizations, but that once a year thing doesn't work. We have to hold people accountable on an ongoing basis. Now, let me just say, you as HR, you can't do this on your own, obviously. You have to get the line involved in this. So we've been getting more and more requests for something called HR for non-HR managers. I keep getting this request over and over and over because HR is realizing, and if you haven't realized it, I'm pushing it to you now, you can't do all of this on your own. You have to push some of this operational HR pieces down into the line so that we can hold people accountable. Plan the communication. This is the mistake that most organizations make in trying to change and re-engineer. The communication is not planned, so people don't know. Who needs to know? What do they need to know? When do they need to know it? How do they need to know it? And who needs to tell them? You are not always the best face. See, that's why you have that 15% down in the belly of the beast. And some messages, there's only one person to send it. That's the most powerful person, the most senior person in the organization. But other messages, it's someone deep down in the business that needs to send that. You need to plan that communication that goes along with your change effort. And all of this, of course, we have to take action. This is not just about planning. This is also about taking action. We measure and we monitor and we celebrate success because the human animal needs to hear, you're doing a good job, this is doing well, you're going good, okay, we're moving, we're winning. We're losing here, but we're winning here. That increases the tendency to persist and drives the motivation for people to go. One of the biggest mistakes I think people make and leaders make in these situations is that we get heart failure because it gets worse before it gets better. You know how that is. And because it gets worse before it gets better, a lot of time we... The other thing is that culture protects itself, so it will push back against you. And what many leaders do is that we back down, as opposed to saying, when I see it pushing back, I know something is turning. Now is the time to put the pedal to the metal. And they've increased the speed limit to 100, so that's a good thing. Push harder, in other words, go faster. Pay attention to these culture learning and relearning components. We need to spread the right stories. A lot of this re-engineering is about stories and storytelling. You're battling for the hearts and the minds. We need to create heroes and sheroes, people who stand out positively. We need to tell the organization, hey, these are the people that we need. These are the behaviors that we need. This is the attitude that we need. If you're re-engineering, for example, for innovation, as an example, then you need to make heroes out of those people who are innovative. The rest of the organization will take the cue. The rituals and ceremonies that reinforce that these are the most important things, and the language and how we communicate in the organization. The material symbols that further communicate. You realize that this is a lot about communication. Yeah? Possibly the biggest one is the managerial decisions and actions. This is possibly the biggest one. So if you say we are re-engineering and your CEO is on board, then the CEO has to be willing to say, you either get on board with this, whomever you are as a leader, or you're off the board. You're out of this. It doesn't work. You can't be a leader in the business, and the organization is saying, this is our strategy, which is the most important thing for our survival, for our sustainability, but you're not willing to, and this is not about toe the line, this is about set the example and lead by example in that way. Managers and leaders have a big part to play in terms of hiring, promotions, empowerment, policies, rewards, sanctions, etc. We send the message, the leaders send the message to the business and to the people, this is how you should behave. Can you imagine if you align all of these pieces, the kind of output that you get and the kind of movement? Some organizations are schizophrenic, however. I don't know if you've ever heard this term, organizational schizophrenia. Here are some examples. We want innovation and risk-taking, but don't make mistakes. We need to move faster at execution, but let's complete another round of analysis. We're all about collaboration and cross-functional teams, but the bonus system still rewards individual performance. You can't be doing both. You have to make up your mind. Which are you? You can't be fish and fowl. So if we say, hey, we want innovation, that the organization, all your systems need to be aligned to innovation. So let's drive a quick example, and I know you can't read this. I'm going to run through it for you. Here's an example. If we say the problem is disempowerment, question, where is disempowerment showing up? What are the results of disempowered actions? What's holding empowerment back now? Who needs to be more empowered? How do we want people to demonstrate their new empowerment? How could the empowerment, affect our operations? How should we respond? Notice you have to go to operations because you have to align that. What will we do when people mess up? You don't wait. This is like you're planning a play, a symphony. You think this through. How will we reinforce the empowerment messages? How will we make sure that managers and other leaders practically facilitate and support empowerment? How will we let others know when things are being done right? Create heroes, sheroes, and stories, and the right language. Do our HR systems, this is a kicker now, hiring, orientation, training, rewards, appraisals, performance management, goal setting, etc., support this? And if not, what changes must we make? How will we reward those people who make empowered decisions? How will we discourage disempowered behavior? You have to think it all through. So when I talk about HR is the one to lead this, I'm not just talking about the HR piece of it. It's the operational piece of it. If we are saying that we are changing the organization, let's say for empowerment, then the type of people we hire, we want to hire people who will say, hello, no, I don't agree, I have a difference of opinion. Can we talk about that? Regardless of who is in the room. And then we need the leaders in the room to not say, this is above your pay grade, to say, let me hear what you have to say. Because very often the people deepest in the organization understand it best. Yeah? We've put together this plan, and this is for service. But you would notice that one of the things that we talk about in here is the issue of system alignment. Because what we've said is that if you're crafting a culture around anything, in this case it's service, but it could be anything, then you've got to align all the pieces of your business. One of the critical pieces in terms of alignment is aligning the experience you want those people who either work in the business or the customers to have. And getting very clear on what those experiences are, and then re-engineering your organization to deliver that. And of course, I can't talk you through all of this now, but just to point you to, this is not one of those two-day training programs kind of events. If you want to change your organization, and what you're trying to do is you are looking at a 2-year horizon, 3-year horizon, 4-year horizon. It doesn't have to take 10 years if you're radical enough, and if you have the right support. It doesn't have to take 10 years, but this medium to long-term horizon is what you're looking at over time. So, what does this all mean? Well, here's my take on it. HR has in their hands, or should have in their hands, or in its hands, the power to turn the organization in another direction. Is that easy? No. Is it possible? Yes. But it takes HR understanding, 1, the organization itself, and 2, all these people processes to make sure that the organization starts to behave different. It requires HR having the kind of backbone, this is important, and this was not on any of my slides, but the backbone to call a spade and call a shovel. And that means if you've got leaders who are not on board, if you've got systems that are not aligned, HR needs to be able to call that. HR needs to be able to ask the tough questions about all the pieces of the business so that that seat is assured. And so you are leading this process of realignment, of re-engineering. On the other side of this, let me tell you what you will see. Let me start with what you won't see. Some of the people who are in your business now will not be there. And I know we live in a situation here in Trinidad and Tobago where people like to talk about, the security of their jobs. And I like to say a job is only as secure as you add value to the organization. And the only people who really determine that is the customers. So we can't assure that to any extent beyond that. If you want to be secure in an organization, add value. Now, I know that sounds a little bit brutal. So, Richard, what about people who have mortgages and so on? Yes, sure, we all do. Most of us, anyhow. We all do. But the customers don't care about that. At the end of the day, who decides on all of this? It's the customers. They are the real bosses. And I'm saying, therefore, that when HR looks at re-engineering the organization, sure, we have to think about the possibilities that some of the people who are here will not be here with us. But that's not always a bad thing. Now, when people tell me I've left the organization, I say, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And very often it's a good thing. See, there are people who work in the organization who really, they lead lives of this quiet desperation. They would love you to give them an opportunity to leave, No, and many times HR doesn't accept that, but it's true. I'm saying when you re-engineer, you make some major changes, and when you make those changes, sometimes on the other side of this, some people will not be here. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, having said so, we have to handle it humanely, because it's humans, and I'm not suggesting that we must be brutal. But I'm saying we should not want to sacrifice the organization on the altar of the individuals. The organization has to live on beyond this. And if it must look differently on the other side, whether that means that some people must be different, we are doing different business, or systems and processes are different, if that is what it takes, then that is what it takes. The job of HR is to lead that process and to help those people who are part of that organization, who stay, because those are the people, not the ones who've left, they've gone, but those who stay, get a fair shake, and that the customers on the other end are happy enough to continue doing business with you. Let me give you a story. Many organizations engineer themselves for particular things. We know Disney. And when I did the archetypes before, I said Disney is engineered for that, magic. But we also know if you've interacted with Disney, not just the parks, but wherever, it's also engineered for service, whether it's a cruise or whatever it is. We had an interesting experience last year. So I've convinced the 3 ladies that I live with, 2 daughters and 1 wife, at least you get any ideas, to at the end of the year, take a Christmas vacation. So instead of doing the celebration, we take a Christmas vacation. And so we do a cruise for usually a week, and then we would go up to Florida, because I have a brother who lives there. And we decided last year to do the fireworks. And when I did my research, I found that the best place to see the fireworks is not Magic Kingdom. It's a village that Disney has outside of Magic Kingdom that you can just walk into. And it's the best place, and they pipe all the music in and everything. You don't have to pay, you just walk in. So I went. And I parked in the wrong place. I couldn't find the right entrance, so I ended up in the staff parking lot. So I parked, and my wife says, you shouldn't park there. You're going to get into trouble. And I said, no, this is Disney. I'm a customer. I'm not going to get into trouble. And so we walked in, and they directed us where we must be, and we had a nice time. It was beautiful. And when we were done, we got on a train to take you back to the parking lot. And I realized they weren't stopping at where I was supposed to be, obviously, because you were in the staff parking lot. So I whispered to the train conductor, and he makes an announcement to the train and the driver. He says, we have some special guests here who are parked in our staff parking lot. What we need to do is make another round and go drop them off. This man made us feel like we were VIPs. No, he didn't behave like we did anything wrong. No, here's my thing. This is the conductor on the train. He had no supervisor around him to make sure that he was doing the right thing. It was just engineered, and this is the way that we treat our people. See, and this is what I'm saying. When you re-engineer your organization, the organization starts to behave in a different way. I was on a flight from New York to Johannesburg about 6 months ago. It's a 15-hour flight on South African Airways. Direct flights, one of the longest flights in the world. 15 hours. Yeah, I know, I agree with you. 15 hours. Ah. And they give their normal spiel, get all your stuff, buckle up, do all this stuff. And then they says, the crew on this flight are on duty for the entire flight. We will give you sterling service, maybe not that word, but a word similar, for the entire duration of the flight. I perked up. How do you get people to behave like that on a metal tube at 37,000 feet above the Atlantic for 15 hours? And I wasn't awake all the time. I can't stay awake that long on a flight. You have to sleep, right? But I got up many times and I noticed how the interactions were with the customers, with the people who were flying us. Amazing. And I would walk through the cabin and observe other interactions. How do you get people to behave that way? You have to engineer the organization, hire the right people, create the right systems, create the right rewards, and so on. I'm saying it's possible. It's very, very, very possible.
Not a question, just a comment.
Sure.
And that's taken from your example that you gave in your Disney experience.
Yeah.
I think we need sometimes to re-engineer ourselves, re-engineer our own minds.
Yes.
If we are to re-engineer organizations. So just your thoughts on that.
Yeah? Agreed. Yeah, and I agree with that. I think I would give that a round of applause if it's just me alone here and Janelle and just a few of us. Yeah, you're right. This kind of work is not just transactional. I come to work, I give my 8 to 4, I make my 8 hours and I go back kind of. There is this, I must, one, be bought in and fully committed to this process. Now, having said so, as a human being, you have a life that goes beyond the organization and you must take care of yourself. But your heart and head needs to be in the right place because this is not easy work. Many times you're fighting battles, I don't want to say against, but with people who you're trying to support. You're fighting with people who you're trying to support them in becoming the kind of people they need to be so that the organization could be the kind of place it needs to be. And that's tough work. And as an individual, I have to now determine, am I up for this? Because it's not for everyone, some leaders suffer from heart failure. Not the medical kind, but the kind where I've lost the heart for this kind of work. And this is not an easy journey. So I agree with you, Sandra, that I must re-examine myself and maybe do some internal self-re-engineering, kind of get to this place where as an individual I am prepared and I feel this is what I want to do with my life for this period of my life. Because that's important stuff. That's the other thing. You could easily say, I don't want this tough work. This is not for me. But I'll tell you what, if my prediction that HR needs to lead the organization and not just finance and engineering and legal is to come true, then more HR practitioners need to take that step where we are fully committed, where we leave less room for other people to tell us how to do what we're supposed to do, where we are fully bought in and committed. And when they say yes and we know the answer is no, we say, no, I can't sign off on that. No, I can't agree with that. And this is not to be obstructionist, but it is to have the strength of purpose and the backbone to be able to lead the organization where it needs to go. That's tough work, and some personal re-engineering is often. I agree with you on that. Any other comments or questions? Yep. Karen.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Karen Grace, Choice HR Limited. I want to congratulate Richard on the wonderful work that you're doing worldwide and for a really riveting presentation today.
Thank you.
It landed well. So one comment I want to, a challenge.
Sure.
The carnival mentality. Now, it's something I've been kind of tussling with for a bit. Firstly, I should say, congratulations to all the hardworking HR practitioners in the room. I love HR.
Yes.
It's in my blood. But sometimes, if I knew that the binary ones and twos of the IT people in the room, I might have chosen differently.
Right.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, the carnival mentality, we need to reclaim that. If we think of the kind of productivity and creativity and commitment that goes into the 2 days and the leading up to Carnival, and we harness that energy and put it to work in a deliberate way in our organizations, in our lives, in Trinidad and Tobago on the whole, I am sure that we will be able to make even a 2, 3, 10% improvement on that productivity index.
Yeah.
It is actually worse than the criminality and crime rating that we have in that report.
Yeah.
So my thing for us as HR practitioners is to take on that challenge and really give people the systems and support and reward and recognition to be creative, step out and take chances.
Yeah. Karen, I agree with you. And I had a conversation maybe about a year ago with my eldest brother. He's a sociologist and historian. And at that time, I was applying to universities to do my doctoral studies, which I've pretty much started. I say pretty much because they have a very long process to say yes. But I have a supervisor and all those pieces. So we're kind of moving forward. And I was talking about this issue of productivity. And why is it that we punch so far below our weight in terms of our competitiveness as a nation? And he raised the issue of, well, clearly people are motivated. And he says, and it's a good point, he says, well, if it's carnival time, then people go and practice for many nights to get those tunes just right. And there isn't a lot of reward for that except intrinsically. Wow, got too close there. If it's a holiday, people plan months in advance. You know, who's going to bring the drinks and are we cooking by the river? And this is stereotypical, I know, not everyone does this. But clearly there is a lot of passion and ability and strength and skill and innovation and innovativeness within our people. And this is the big question. How do we as HR practitioners capture that? I get that bit about reward, but I think there are some other things that we have to look at. I think in many cases, we put the wrong people in the wrong place. And people feel frustrated. And they lean towards, okay, I need to come here and do these things so I could go live my other life, my real life. And sometimes there's no meaning. Sometimes there's no meaning in the work that people do. And I get that. I mean, sometimes all work has some pieces that we don't like. I don't know there's any job that you can say, all of it I like. Yeah? But how do we as HR bend and twist the organization, re-engineer if you want, to capture this heart and this soul and this passion that is obviously resident within us as a people? How do we do that? How do we begin to twist the organization? And then, let me add, finding the right people. Because I don't think everyone is for every position. I know that. I mean, despite what their certificate says, despite what their experiences say, finding the right people and not just relying on that interview. See, that doesn't work. It doesn't allow you to get behind the eyes. And the real person sits down behind the eyes, down inside there somewhere. Finding those right people and having the strength of purpose to say, no, this is not the right fit. And you won't always win that battle. And making sure that the systems and the processes in the organization work such that when you do find the right fit, people are not frustrated out. But those good ones give you what you need as an organization for the time that they're there. I mean, many people are not prepared to stay for 15 and 20 years anymore. And that's fine, it's okay. Once you're here, you do what you need to do while you're here and give us that 120%. But it's a lot of work for HR to get to that place. There's a lot of work to be done, to look deeper than just let's hire, let's reward them. I'm agreeing with that, let's manage the performance. Most organizations are not doing the full performance. There's all these pieces that need to be looked at. There's another conference in this, Karen, for sure. Can we take one more and we're going to wrap up? Judy.
Hi, morning, Richard.
Morning, Judy.
Truly enjoyed the presentation.
Thank
Morning,
you.
everyone. Judy Joseph McSween, Meredith McSween International. Quite a mouthful. Richard, I want to tap back to a couple of things that you raised in the presentation
Sure.
that is mulling in my mind, in that what you're talking about is a major change initiative within the organization.
Yes.
And what's been resonating with me is that when we talk about change, we always hear that other analogy, that change begins with me.
With me.
And I'm wondering if the process needs, and it probably links very much to what Sandra raised earlier on, that HR probably needs to look first at HR and apply these things that you've said
Yeah.
to HR as an individual, me, the individual HR person.
Yeah.
Because for me to be able to do this, I really need to ask myself, what is the narrative
Yeah.
that I currently tell myself that is preventing me from doing this?
Yeah.
So sometimes I think the whole HR as a body of HR professionals need to take a time out and do that self-examination
Yeah.
and identify what is keeping me back from doing, leading, as you're saying, the HR profession needs to do. What are my thought patterns? What are my
Yeah.
behavior
Yeah.
patterns that leave me there? And when I can overcome that, when I can change self, then I can now confidently and, with strength go out
Yeah.
to do the transformation that you speak of.
Totally, and it connects very neatly with what Sandra was saying. And let me tell you what comes up for me, Judy. HR is not a profession like the other professions. This is what comes up for me when I hear you, and I'm agreeing. It's not as transactional as the others, and we are dealing with a different animal. The finance people have their finance. The finance doesn't talk back. It doesn't have a bad side of the bed. No, stay with me. HR is dealing with humans, the most confusing animal on the planet. It is not just about putting the boxes in the right place, obviously. It takes something on the inside of the individual. And this inward look, I mean, maybe we needed a presentation on that. Relooking HR in terms of an inward look, the practitioners. Because how do I lead other people to be different if I, and then my function, isn't different? If we aren't different, then how do I lead others to be different? Moving that in the right direction, for me, that's what comes up for me. And taking this look, because again, you see, it's the emotions that trip the human up. Yeah, it's the emotions. Your computer systems, your production systems, if they don't work, we troubleshoot, we change, we upgrade. That's not so hard. But humans, when they go to courts, they don't ask, does this bed have a wrong side? So you've got that emotional component that gets in the way. And so what worked last year or 5 years, or when I came into the world of work, I didn't ask them if they had a promotional system, training, nothing. I was just happy to be hired. You get the millennials coming into the organization today, it's very different. So it takes, I'm just using that as an example, but it takes this first, we have to be different, and I'm agreeing with you 100%, Judy. I've seen one finger, so we'll take you as the last question, and we're going to wrap up. I'm seeing, this is flashing red as well.
Morning, conference. Morning, Richard.
Morning.
You delivered an excellent, riveting, and capturing presentation this morning. And as a lover and practicing HR person,
Yeah.
4 things jumped out at me.
Yeah.
In the first instance, we are quite right. The human being, tomorrow you mightn't like coffee.
Yeah. Not me, but maybe somebody else. But get your point.
Right. And as such, we need to evolve individually within our space.
Sure.
Psychology,
Yeah.
I think, is a major, major
For sure.
component. Because how do I treat with you if I don't know the psychology of you?
Yeah.
2, critical thinking.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely required. Emotional intelligence, that pulls everything together. And if we don't invest in developing our emotional intelligence, then how do we have conversations in a difficult space?
Yeah.
And maintain relationships? As you said, there are some people who would leave, definitely, in our re-engineered and realignment. That's okay.
That's fine.
That's fine. But how do we have those difficult conversations with those who retain? If I am not comfortable with self, and if I don't have myself, as it were, as a third party, to appreciate that, hey, it's not personal. But it is also personal.
It is also personal, yeah.
How do we deal with that oxymoronic situation and still have the objectivity to continue in our aligned vision to get to that place? And finally, I think that if we don't love what we're doing, don't wait for that payday. we're going to absolutely mess it up. Because we need to love self first in order for us to love everybody.
Yeah.
That's my contribution.
Thank you very much. And and I think you're getting an amen down at the back there. I don't know if they're going to pass a collection plate, but I agree. Listen, I'll tell you what. This is hard work and this is tough work, and I'm wrapping up here. There's so much more that can be said in terms of this practice and in terms of what HR needs, who HR needs to be in order to do what HR needs to do. I'd be happy to chat with you all some more, but thank you all very much. Meet me across at our booth on the other side here, and I'm happy to chat with you some more. Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.